making another video. Um, yeah, so last weekend was the Herd Indian Fair, Indian Market. They hold it every year in March, and I can hear the dryer in the background, so I'm going to close my door real quick. Yeah, so yeah, the Indian Market was this past weekend, and I attended it, and I have been attending it for the past 3 years, and it's fun. It's really fun. I get to see friends, and I get to see new art from people from indigenous people from around the world, and I was really looking forward to this year. But that begs the question, Kayla, why don't you ever apply for it? And a lot of people have been asking me that ever since I moved out here to Phoenix. And I've also had people ask me when I used to live in New Mexico, why didn't I also, do it there? Um, so I guess this video is for me to explain. I was going to do an essay, but hopefully my thoughts can be conveyed well. But once again, I will have relevant articles in my video. But yeah, so it's kind of fun doing this type of, I guess, vlogging, because I know words can be really um, dense for people to read. And I guess I do like the video where I can speak my mind and things like that. But I'll try to speak as loud and as clearly as I can. Anyway, so why don't I try for these things? And the reason being is that my work does not qualify me to do these things. And by that, I mean, move my book for a second. Let's see, artist application, there we go. Information for all artists. Let's see. Oh, right there. It's in here. And then general information. So you can access this information on the Herd Museum if you want to take a look yourself, and I will show some links as well. So usually the applications for these things are done fall. So this was for the 2024 event that just happened. So this is just the application information and policies and things like that. So they must be juried and accepted into the primary category to receive a booth assignment, sell artwork, and to enter juried competition in that category. And if you want to sell artwork and enter juried competition in a secondary category, the artist must be juried and accepted in that category. Artists may only sell work in these two categories. So you're probably wondering, what are the categories? So the categories are Classification 1, jewelry, lapidary, metalwork. Classification 2, pottery. Classification 3, two-dimensional art. And then we have pebble carvings, sculpture, weaving of textiles, diverse art forms, and baskets. So in my case, I would be two-dimensional art. So as you can see on there, it says oil, acrylic, all other, including watercolor and gouache. Prints, editions of no more than 50, each numbered and signed. Drawings, pen, pencil, charcoal, crayons, markers, mixed media, photography editions of no more than 100 each, numbered and signed. And right here you can see no entry may exceed 48 inches at its greatest dimension, which is why I didn't apply this year, is because this one's way bigger than 48 inches. It's roughly 72 inches. And there's a smaller painting. So all of my stuff, like this, no good. No good. My prints, my stickers, all my other comic books, not acceptable. So the reason why I'm making this video today is because when I went to the market yesterday and I saw my friend and we were browsing the area, and she was like, hey, did you see these certain people selling stuff? And I was like, no, what do you mean? And my friend was saying, there are people selling t-shirts, but it's printed on. So with the restrictions from the Herd Museum, they don't allow mass-produced items. And mass-produced items is kind of like basically my work, comics, stickers, bookmarks. Well, I don't do bookmarks anymore, but you know what I mean. So I was like shocked, and I saw the booth, and it was a guy who must have, had someone, send his artwork to someone, and then they would print it on a t-shirt, and then he would pick them up, and then he would sell them at the event. So it's different from like a screen print shirt, because the screen print, it's like you get the screen, you have the image, and then you get the shirt, and then you press it on. I don't have a physical example, but you get what I mean. So yeah, so it's like, I think in apparel, it should say that too. Weavings. Let's say personal attire without beads or quill work. So it can be, I guess, there's also the baskets, but Device Art Firm says personal attire cleaning ensembles, they usually just require it as without beads or quill work. But, in all of my experience with, trying for this event, they're strict. No mass-produced items. So my friend said, I heard there was another person making mass-produced items selling it at their booth, so can you go check when you walk around? Because my friend, So I was like, okay. So I went, and I saw 7 people selling artwork. And I just want to, I'm opening the booth list right now. And that's a lot of people. And the whole list was just nothing but people. And it's just, I was shocked. To see so many people doing mass-produced items. And, it's just, it was really upsetting, to say the least. So anyway, here is the Indian Arts and Crafts Act of 1990, if you're not familiar with it. And the Indian Arts and Crafts Act of 1990 really does influence a lot of what gets made, and of not what gets made, sorry, I misspoke, of what is allowed and what is not allowed at Indian markets like the Herd Museum in Phoenix and the Santa Fe Indian Market in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So this act was done. It's a truth in advertising law that prohibits misrepresentation in the marketing of Indian art and craft products within the United States. It is legal to offer, display for sale or sell any art or craft product in a manner that falsely suggests that it is Indian produced, an Indian product, or the product of a particular Indian or Indian tribe, or Indian Arts and Crafts organization resident within the United States. If you are a first-time violator, an individual will face civil and criminal penalties up to a $250,000 fine or a 5-year prison term, or both. And if it's a business, they will also get civil penalties, or they can be prosecuted and fined up to $1 million. So, this is a big reason as to why the Herd Museum has these policies. And I don't really blame them, because they have to make sure, they have to require that things will not blow up in their faces. And in the case of the this this year's market, March 2 to 3rd, 2024, anyone who applies to the Herd Museum has to prove that they are an enrolled native. And if you know what that means, and if you don't, basically it means that you need to be an enrolled member of your tribe. So if you are someone who is disconnected, or you're reconnected, or you were adopted out, you will not be able to participate in the market. And I am pretty sure the Santa Fe market does too. From what I remember from when I was looking at the qualifications. So here we have the artist directory. So if you could see it, and I'll adjust my camera. So me and my partner, like, here's where you enter and then here's all this. So we circled this area, and then this area half a year, and this area right here. So we did not see these two places, and we did kind of see the amphitheater. Anyway, these 3 places right here that we saw 7 artists, and it was cards, prints, stickers, magnets, apparel, and tote bags. And mass produce is basically like, you know, it's a printed image on top of it. And so I talked to my friend again, and I talked to another friend that was also, you know, had a booth at this market, and, you know, they expressed disappointment, and then they expressed, you know, like, hey, Kayla, you could do it. You could do the market, you know, technically, because if they're letting people sell that stuff here at the market, then you should be able to. And the thing is, with my works, with my books, you know, like my newest one, this biggest one, you know, Six World Volume 1 edition, you know, this is 172 pages. It's a huge project. I still have copies if you want to buy it on my website. I'll have a link. You know, all of my comics and my prints and soon my stickers will be printed by a tribal-owned company called Tribal Print Source. And I've been working with these guys since 2017, since I first met them at Indigenous Comic Con back in 2017. You know, but this is their logo, Tribal Print Source. They are a division of the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. They're tribally owned since 1972. This is a paper sample. You know, you can get one if you want to like explore what type of paper samples you want to try. But yeah, I really recommend them. I've been using them. So yeah, and all of my art is made by me. You know, it's not AI generated. It's not me commissioning someone else. I do the writing, I do the drawing, I do the editing, I do the PDF compilation. I do it all on my computer, and then I send it to, you know, Tribal Print Source for them to print it, and then they print it out for me. You know, and it's a tribal-owned company. There are people from the tribe who work at the printer, and, you know, they sorry, they get it done for me. They send it here, and then I sell it. You know, that's how most of my art works, is that I make it and then someone else prints it, but it's a tribal-owned company. So I thought to myself, well, I'm not like these other people that I saw at the market who may have been using on-demand, you know, digital, like online, like printers that may not even be native. And I will say that maybe I should have asked these people where they got their stuff from, you know, just to make sure. But I didn't want to be like a busybody. But, you know, I was mostly just wanting to keep a number of how many people exactly were here at the Herd market, you know. And it was like a mix of people here, and lots of people over here in this area. You know, once again, I didn't get to check these areas. So, you know, they have these restrictions. And so I decided to reach out to the Herd Museum and, you know, ask them about, hey, can I apply for next year, you know? And the response I got was, let me get my phone and I'll just read it out loud. I'll just paraphrase it because it was a lot of emails being sent back and forth. Let's see. Yeah. So not gonna say who said this, but hello. I know there were a bunch of things out that should not have been out. I'm going to make a point to call those mass-produced items out as not permissible, and this was underlined, not permissible next year. That is the original intent of the rules and regulations. It has crept in more and more over the past couple of years. Thank you for your interest, you know. And I was like, okay, well, thanks for your clarification. Should I understand that I should not apply with the intention of selling my comics, my printers, and my stickers, even though they're printed by a tribal-owned printer? As in, if I apply and have those items shown/sold at my booth, if I were to be hypothetically accepted, you know, for 2025 Herd Museum market, despite their creation being me and another tribal entity, would they be rejected? And this, you know, the Herd Museum employee, who I will not say the name of, said it's complex. And, it really is complex. It really is complex. Yeah. So you can yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna put tribal print source right here in case you want to know what they look like. This is their website. Please check them out. I've been using them forever. They do great stuff. And they are a tribally owned nonprofit print and training facility. So they train people, in their tribe to print and things. So anyway, the spokesperson at the Heard Museum said, I do know that if you apply with mass-produced materials, you may not get the same juried scores as people applying with authentic and original materials. Original comic books pose a different question. There's also the graphic novel nature of the work. Literature is currently not considered an art product under the Indian Arts and Crafts Act. Changes are currently being discussed at the federal government level. And the Heard Museum will have to respond to these changes in the updated regulations once they become adopted. Prints are currently permissible, but they have to be in a limited number signed. Let me know if you have any questions. And he sent me, information and said, I do think you should apply with your original works. And I said, okay, hello, I have one question. Would I be able to sell my comics? Because it's my main work. I have so many comics. This isn't the only one. I have Death Becomes Her. I have Catwitch. I have Sixth World. I have, Anathema. I have all these comics, and they are what get me the big sales, these comics, So if I were only selling my paintings that are usually like $500 and above, or if I'm only selling my prints that are usually $100 and above, it's kind of a harder sale because it's not like as small, because I do know, like, when people go to Indian market, they do buy stuff, but I do know, like, for some people, they just go there to look, and my philosophy is, like, I want to keep things affordable for other people, for other, especially Native people. Like, my work is for everyone, but I want to make it affordable. So, like, the most expensive thing I have is probably this book. It is $45. Everything else that I sell on my store, on my website, is under $45. So anyway, I asked, well, can I sell my comics at my booth if I were to get hypothetically get accepted to the Heard Indian market for 2025? And the response I got was, I want to say yes to this, but I cannot decide unilaterally. I have to speak to the larger Heard Fair Committee. If they were limited edition, numbered, and signed, it would fit the regulations. I will have to bring it up in the spring meetings. Thank you for your interest in work. Sincerely, Heard employee. Yeah. So you can see here, Tribal Print Source does digital printing, wide format printing, promotional items, design and mailing service, and offset printing. And you can submit files through here. But yeah, so imagine my frustration, in the emails. Like, I know that the employee can only say so much, and it's not the whole committee because, the works have to be juried. But the thing is like, I'm really used to being excluded from Native markets. My art, my comics are, I think they're art. I think they're Native art. It's art made by natives, hence it's Native art. That is my classification, but it's really complex because we have things like the Indian Arts and Crafts Act. We have these museums and organizations that are funded on a federal level, and if they don't want to get in trouble, then they have to abide by the Indian Arts and Crafts Act by 1990. And like the employee said, technically comic books are literature, so it would not have to be beholden to that fact. However, the complexity of the issue is that I could not technically sell it unless I were to make it more exclusive or limited edition and each one signed. And, to me, I feel like I could do that, but it's the fact that I have to jump through these hoops for my work to be considered, acceptable, for my works to be qualified under the strict requirements of the Heard Museum Indian market And you know, the same goes for Santa Fe Indian Market. I think their applications are closed, but if you look up their qualifications, they are pretty similar. You have to be enrolled, you have to submit, you know, certain works, certain guidelines, qualifications, you know, and then for two-dimensional art, you can see it's just paintings, 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 prints, drawings, mixed media, photography. And, you know, I do have paintings, as I showed you earlier, I do have paintings. But it's like my comics are my art too. So why can't they be qualified? Why can't they be judged? And, you know, it just reminds me of, you know, this article that I always love to show people. You know, it's called A Frequently Misunderstood American Master. The Yankutonai Dakota painter Oscar Howe, who died in 1983, is the subject of a remarkable retrospective at the National Museum of the American Indian. This was written by Peter Schildelau. I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. July 4th, 2022. So, you know, if you're in town, come here, check out his artworks. Howe is a frequently misunderstood American master. He bridged ethnic authenticity and internationalist daring-do through condensation from establishment institutions and proprietary tribute from some sectarian advocates have hindered his recognition as a straight-up canonical modernist. Really, go see. So it talks about, you know, how he graduated after living on a reservation. He was born in an impoverished reservation in South Dakota and then shipped off to a United States federally run boarding school. And if you're familiar with Native history, those boarding schools, you know, killed children. Oh, there's my cat. Sorry, I need to open the door. I'm in here. Yes. You know, so it goes into his background. He spoke no English when he arrived. Yeah, she's trying to contribute to the conversation. He spoke no English when he arrived. He was beset by eye and skin diseases. In 1924, traumatized by news of the death from an illness of his mother, he contemplated suicide. The school left him to convalesce. And, you know, he was able to go back to the res and spend time with his grandmother, Shellface, you know, to learn about tribal history, myth, and how, you know, subsequently returned to the school, which had undergone humane reforms by the time he returned. After graduating in 1933, he enrolled in a... Do you mind? She wants to be involved. She's just hearing me talk and she wants to talk too. Anyway, after graduating in 1933, he enrolled in a trailblazing art program at the Santa Fe Indian School in New Mexico. So you can see there he is with his art, you know, and during this time, this was considered to be very modern artwork, you know, but it's inspired by his experiences. Howe quickly became a leading light in what was dubbed the studio style, which originated at the school, elegantly arraying linear treble motifs in negative space with sparing touches of color. So it goes more into that, how he worked and did more, you know, lived his life, went to the military, and, you know, he resumed teaching and got a BA and MFA degrees at universities there in Oklahoma. And yeah. So the part that I would like to focus on is was when he sent his work in to be judged for a contest. His was a lonely course, incurring resistance even from compatriots who routinely hailed him. As late as 1958, he was denied consideration for a prize in the annual show of native artists because his new painting that he submitted, Umini Wasipi, which is War and Peace Dance, was declared not Indian despite its indubitable subject matter. It is reproduced in the fine catalog of Dakota Modern, but its present whereabouts are uncertain. He responded with the sole publicized polemic of his career, a letter to an organizer of the show, which therein he mocked the tourist bait, pretty stylized pictures favored by the officially sanctioned authorities. Quote, "Are we to be held back forever with one phase of Indian painting that is the most common way," he wrote, We are to be herded like a bunch of sheep with no right for individualism, dictated as the Indian has always been. Yeah. Put on reservations and treated like a child. Um, and it's with that letter, it's with him like speaking out that, um, I've read some articles say it did lead to some changes in the definition of what is Indian art, including modern contemporary painting styles. But the exhibition took place, however, but the personal invitation to the work proved to be a ruse to trick the artist into appearing on the television show This Is Your Life, which made a shtick of surprising featured guests with sentimental exposures of their life stories. Having thus been ostracized on the one hand and exoticized on the other, Howe stood alone. Howe took as little interest in political contestation as he did in commercial pastiche. But he had to be conscious of the drama that he enacted through his forthright embrace of his Dakota heritage with either parochial constriction or outward rancor, however justifiable that rancor might have been. He proposed and exemplified a tough but open-ended imperative for all, for Native American artists of all stylistic stripes. Looking back with fealty, sideways with candor, while forging ahead. In a statement that he published in 1959, "This is our art, and here's where we are making our stand. The least we can do is fight this last battle, that Indian culture may live forever." Yeah, it's really, yeah. It's frustrating, because this was what, I wish I could see that. Let's see. Check. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to, oh yeah, this was 1958. This is the original letter that Oscar Howe sent to the curator of the show American Indian Art at the Philbrook Art Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Oh, I guess I can't see it. Whoever said that my paintings are not in the traditional Indian style has poor knowledge of Indian art indeed. There is much more to Indian art than pretty stylized pictures. There was also power and strength in individualism, emotion, and an intellectual insight in old Indian paintings. Every bit in my paintings is a true studied fact of Indian paintings. Are we to be held back forever with one phase of Indian painting that is the most common way? We are to be herded like a bunch of sheep with no right for individualism, dictated as the Indian has always been, put on reservations and treated like a child, and only the white man knows what is best for him. Now even in art, quote, "You little child, do what we think is best for you, nothing different." Well, I'm not going to stand for it. Indian art can compete with any art in the world, but not as a suppressed art. I see so much of the mismanagement and treatment of my people. It makes me cry inside to look at these poor people. My father died there about 3 years ago in a little shack. My two brothers still living there in shacks. Never enough to eat, never enough clothing, treated as second-class citizens. This is one of the reasons I've tried to keep the fine ways and culture of my forefathers alive. But one could easily turn to become a social protest painter. I only hope the art world will not be one more contributor to holding us in chains. Oscar Howe. And here's another article. I think the other one before is from New York Times. This is from the Smithsonian. And this was in the, when the Smithsonian was doing a National Museum kind of, look at his artwork. This wasn't the painting. I don't think this was the painting that got rejected. But as you can see, Oscar Howe's work is very eclectic and colorful and, just a far cry from what is, traditional Native art. And, with that said, and this is Hunter's Dream by Oscar Howe's main, 1934 and 1938. The thing is like, I don't think that I'm any better or that I have priority compared to, indigenous artists who are doing like traditional crafts work, whether it's, weaving, bead making, quill work, the list goes on and on. I don't want to present myself as someone who has more of a priority than these people. I don't want to give off the idea that I don't respect them, because I do. I got to weave a couple of years ago, and it was, the most wonderful experience of my life because I wanted to learn how to weave. My great grandma on my mother's side weaved. My dad's mother weaved. We come from a family of weavers. And when I was little, I didn't have much of an interest in it. It seemed intense, and paper and pencil was much easier for me to pick up compared to, weaving and wool and all that stuff. And for me, for my art, for comics, I feel like it's just as important, like I'm telling stories in a new format, but I want it to be accessible. I want it to be there for people. I want it there to inspire people of all ages to make their own art, because once again, if you're Native and you make art, that's Native art. And I feel like these institutions that are supposedly keeping our heritage alive and safe are doing a lot of restriction. And, it's just, I don't particularly care for it. And that's a really long, involved answer to why I don't submit to the Heard Museum and I don't submit my work to Santa Fe, Indian Market. And, submit is such an interesting word because we think submit because you're submitting your work to an art jury to look at it and see if they'll give you money and if it qualifies for these awards and all that, which would be great, because the economy is awful right now. But then, it's like submit. Am I submitting to the institution? Am I submitting to a museum? And do I need to contort myself to fit in these, requirements? Because in that case, it feels like it's not art anymore. It just feels like propaganda. It feels like, pretty stylized images like Oscar Howe said. And, I think comics are important. Comics are important to me. And I feel like there's been so many people I've talked to in my life ever since I've been making these, since 2017. All the kids I talk to, all the adults I talk to, all the people, older than me that I've talked to that respect me and my work and are happy to see it, Sometimes they'll say, this is really new and I'm not used to it, but I like it. And that's great, But it often feels upsetting that these people are like, why isn't your work in these museums? Why isn't your work in big galleries? Why aren't you at these big Indian markets? And it's, all I have to tell them is that none of what I do is acceptable to these institutions, to these museums, to these markets. And, it's such a complex issue, just like what, the employee of the Heard Museum said, the Crafts Act of 1990. We have people trying to protect their work, but then we have people who can assert themselves and want to be making art and knowing that because of their status as a politicized person, being Native, their art will be used for consumption, And that's the real question. Who gets to define Native art? Is it the Trading Post? Is it the non-Natives? Is it the, museums that contain Native art? Or is it the Native artists, in today's day and age, using any and all mediums to convey the story, to convey their message? So I guess at the end of all of this, what I really want to say is that I don't think I'm going to apply for the Heard Museum, and I know that must be disappointing news for people, but I don't really want to constrain myself and have to make my art more elevated or acceptable so that way I can get into a market. And this is not like me trying to tell people to not apply for these things, because I have friends who have been going to Santa Fe Indian Market, who have been going to the Heard Market for years, and I support them in what they do. It's just, I work in a different medium. We all make art, but we're working in different mediums. Even if theirs is more, traditional craft space, I respect them because I'm happy to see their work. I'm happy to see Native artists making art, whether it's movies, whether it's comics, whether it's illustrations, whether it's, they're carrying on what their family did, or they're combining the old and the new, you know. But I guess this video is just me wanting to explain my frustration, my experiences, and why I'm probably not ever going to apply to these things unless they open their minds, they open the requirements, you know. But until then, you'll see me at local markets within the Southwest. I'm going to try to go to as many as I can. I'm definitely going to be at Tucson Zine Fest in April, and there's a market that I'll be attending here in Phoenix on the 16th, so look forward to that. But yeah, if you want to support me and my art, please go to my website, KaylaShaggy.gallery, and please, if you like the stickers I do, if you like the comics I do, if you like the prints I do, they're here for sale unless they're sold out. And I am planning a restock, but whatever's in stock, you should totally go for it. And if you want to do like more direct support, I would very much insist and recommend that you join my Patreon, where you can get, art sent to you as I upload it. So it's kind of like you can pay from $1 to $100, however much you're able to pay, and you would be paying me like, every month, once every month. It's kind of like a subscription, but the subscription is you get to see my art, you get to see sketches, you get to see behind the scenes, you get to see art uploaded and with like behind the scenes stuff before anyone else does. And you also get free downloads of my comics as well. But yeah, so I also have my website, KaylaShaggy.gallery, has more information on my podcast and all the other links that I have. But yeah, so I just really want to say that you might know a Native artist who is struggling with the exclusive, nature, the restrictive nature of markets that will judge whether or not your stuff is Native enough to be in, or if it is qualified in the terms that they have in their applications. But I would just like to say, please support them, even if they're making, like, especially so if they're making contemporary modern art, because if you're a Native and you make art, that's Native art. But yeah, I really do love the end of the Smithsonian article. Howe returned to compete in, win, and serve as a juror for the Philbrook Indian Annual for many years afterward. By the time he died in 1983, he had had a long career as an art educator, nurturing many young Native artists, and his work has been shown at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And yet, in his lifetime, Ash Milby says, critics struggled to categorize his work. They called it neo-Cubist and suggested to his great frustration that it was merely derivative of European art. His work was ahead of its time, she says. I don't think the art world was ready to see him as both a Native American and a modern artist.